everybody, it is Romania Black, and it's the rule of 8 for Psychopath Season 2. Oh my god! So yes, we're on episode 8 of Season 2. The rule of 8, as you all know, is that the 8th episode in a small 11 to 13 episode series is going to be usually amazing. I think the only series that has contradicted that rule is Attack on Titan, but that's a story for another day. So I am so excited for this episode. There is so much suspicion. Togani is super suspicious. We don't know which brains are functioning in the SYBIL system and controlling Kasai. Akane is being targeted. Mika is in kind of a weird state because she's probably going to be targeted by Togani or not. I don't know. And then she also is trying to help Akane, but she also is kind of mad at Akane because Akane is talking about Kamui. Meanwhile, Kamui has not only proven that they can hack not only the security systems and the drones of the SYBIL system, but apparently now they've used the Dominators and will possibly be able to use them alongside his 7 other lackeys, including Shisui. So that's terrifying. The fact that there could be 8 Dominators pointed against Division 1. How many members of Division 1 are there? There's Akane, there's Ganoza, there's Togani, there's Mika, there's Kunazuka, there's Hinakawa, there's Shion, there's Saiga. Are there 8 members? Oh, and Sugo, who's out of commission. But yeah, there's 8 or 9 members, and 8 or 9 members of Kamui's team after them. So the numbers add up. And number 8, am I right? Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So yeah, no big deal. But yeah, I'm really nervous about this episode. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I wanted to go ahead and watch it because after episode 7, I was like, oh, I want to see what happens and what we end up getting. So we'll just have to see, right? Of course, before we start this episode, though, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon, who help me and support me on my channel and help fund the reactions and the content that you guys see. So, but thank you for being a YouTube subscriber. Thank you for being a Patreon, no matter what tier you are on. But the philanthropy tier get a special shout out. So special thanks to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, to Kiri, to Eric, to Loisiji, aka Frogman, to Lyndon, to Matthew Palfiniere, to Murphew, to Nicholas, to Nameless Monster, to Sunspots, to Shimoyama, to Trails, Translucent Men, Schlap-a-Lot, as well as Mateo El Fidel. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. got some coffee stuck in my throat. Yeah, I'm really excited. I hope you all are too. But there's been so much mystery, so much suspicion. I'm curious how what's going to happen now that Kamui, at least with Mikishima, you kind of knew what to expect because you knew Mikishima was trying to lure Kogami out. You knew that was the case, and even as they were doing all this bioterrorism and everything, you knew that Kogami was a part of it. So you could kind of sort of predict what was maybe going to occur. And you were just kind of wondering what Mikishima was going to do in response to it. But here with Kamui and getting Akane, I don't know. So I just don't want, now that we're getting closer to Shion, Kunazuka, and Hinakawa as the series goes on, and Saiga, I don't want to lose any of them, and I'm terrified at the prospect of losing them. So we were talking on the Discord being like, wow, we really love these characters. It'd be a shame if this show killed them off. I don't want that to happen. No. So we'll just have to see. So we're going to find out and start episode 8. Lucky number. Don't let me down. Episode 8 of Psychopath Season 2. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Oh, hi. Oh, hi. It's episode 8. Did you want to know all the things? Did you want an exposition dump? Did you want everything all at once? I feel like Mika right now. I feel like Mika's brain is exploding like mine is. Poor girl. Also, we're going to call out some double standards. We're going to call out some things. I know y'all are like, wait, what? I am wild and feral. I had to take a second and get on Discord and just like calm down, check a few comments, like calm my mind, let my brain rest for 5 seconds because I was like, wait, what? Oh my God. Well, you know, when we were going into this episode, I was like, we got episode 8 and then we got 4 more episodes. We don't have 4 more episodes. We have 9, 10, 11. We have 3 episodes left of this season. I keep telling myself it's a 12 episode season, but it's not. It's only 11. So we have 3 episodes to tie this all up. And now that that's happening, I'm like, okay, well, I kind of do see, I see now why they gave us all of this at once, but this whole scenario is effed. Like just effed. Oh no. Oh no, I'm not getting good vibes from this at all. I am not getting good vibes from this at all. Oh my God. So we got a lot of answers. Some of which I wasn't ready for. Some of which I wasn't expecting. Oh my God. Togany is essentially part of the SYBIL system. That is a thing. Kamui is basically a part of the SYBIL system. That is a thing. Oh my God. Oh my God. We have a lot to go through and we just need to dive in. But my brain, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Where's Makishima? We need Makishima to get his ass back over here. So I do like the beginning of this, Mika going to the Ministry of Economy, to the archive office and accessing these files, right? So, oh my God, Kamui, my dude. Yeah. So we basically have multiple parties vying for who's going to control society in Japan. Is it going to be Kamui's system or is it going to be the SYBIL system? And there's a lot of terminology and a lot of things kind of thrown about in this that's like, oh my God, what do we do with this? But Mika, she knew too much. And now I'm terrified with Mika knowing about the SYBIL system. I'm terrified actively. And we're going to talk about why, because I'm a little bit worried. Mika is rather impulsive. As we've seen this episode and throughout this series, she's really impulsive. She doesn't quite think her way through things somehow, which, you know what? The way that Mika acts is, you know, people like Mika that would react the way that she reacts. You know, people like Mika that would jump to these conclusions and immediately go to the higher authorities. She's like a Karen going up and telling the manager, being like, well, here's all the problems that I've found. And her reaction is oh my God, Mika is Flock from Attack on Titan. She's basically Flock. She's kind of is. Oh my God, no! Mika is Flock. Oh, yeah, because she acts just like, you know, people that would act like her. And that terrifies me on a very high level for reasons that we're going to get into. But I swear, if she's the result of characters like Hinakawa dying, I will freak. I will be like, Mika, no. Because you know they're going to kill Mika eventually. Mika is not like, but we're going to talk about this. Oh my God. We're going to talk about this. But yeah, so she tries to access these files and she finds this file, the technology patents filed based on Kirito Kamui's surgery. So, okay, Kamui. We're going to put Kamui over here. We're going to put Kamui here. And we're going to put Togany over here. Oh my God. Togany, this trust fund baby. This Nepo baby that's trying to get with Akane. I'm so glad that Togany's whole backstory came out of the woodworks. I'm so glad. Oh my God. I'm like, oh, but him and Kamui's connection, they're not really working together. They're actively working against each other, but it's yeah. We're going to go into this. So based on the surgery, I want to lay it all out before I dive into my discussion of it. But I felt like Mika, he's had a surgery joining 184 bodies. Oh my God. So the 184 that died on the plane, parts of them were surgically added to Kamui. right? And it was done by the woman that we're going to have her name up here. She's basically Dr. Frankenstein. Essentially, Kamui is essentially a sci-fi Frankenstein. Basically, he kind of is. I mean, he's constructed out of all of these corpses so that he can evade the system. And that's kind of the crazy thing about it, is that as the body parts were accepted by his body and integrated into them, they became unnoticeable by the system. So that was his way of evading and figuring out how to get past SYBIL system and not be detected by the scans, right? Now, the fun thing is, he's not suggesting that everybody goes through the same multi-body surgeries that he is, although he has been allowing in his lackeys, which we find out are illegal aliens that are entering the country, are ones that have had body parts transferred to, are having body parts transferred to not be detected. And so now there's 8 of them total, which include Shisui and Kamui, that have dominators and could attack the inspectors. Now, do I think, tinfoil hat theory time, do I think with the illegal aliens that Kogami could be one of them? We didn't see the other 6, other than Shisui and Kamui. We didn't see the other 6 that were involved in getting the dominators to use them. We have not seen them. So is it possible that one of the illegal aliens that has made their way back into the country could be Kogami? Yeah, it could be. Kogami could be going undercover, and I'm not going to rule it past this series to say if Kogami... I mean, what knight in black shining armor could come rescue Akane as she's being, held hostage by Togani? Why, the guy that Togani's been trying to impersonate. Absolutely, right? The guy that he's been trying to impersonate. So do I think there's a chance that Kogami could be one of these illegal aliens that kind of got because it makes sense they had illegal aliens come, they wouldn't be detected by the system anyway, and if they have body parts placed in them that are different. Do I think Kogami would undergo surgery to save Akane? Yeah. Or for all we know, he hasn't, for all we know, the lackeys, the other 6, have not undergone surgeries necessarily, but are illegal aliens that are working with Kamui to overtake the system, to overrun the SYBIL system and dismantle it. Yeah, I would not put it past Kogami to come back. If he caught wind that Kamui sent out hey everybody, here's a call, I want you to come and audition and be part of my crew, and Kogami's like, oh, time to go help, and save Akane. I wouldn't put the show past it to have him show up at the last minute and be our Deus Ex Machina, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. There's a part of me that thinks it's not going to happen, which is fine, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to complain if Kogami shows up, and I'm not going to think it's cliche. I'm going to be like, yes, hello, sir. It's great to see you, sir. I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. But yeah, the idea of transplanting 184 bodies. And this is the part that got me. The part where they said that there were 7 brains, like the plane crash victims, and their bodies were cut into pieces and implanted into a boy. Yeah. And Saiga's like, that's I like that Saiga's not really even questioning this. Here's the thing. I'm going to be honest. At first mention of this, I'm like, that seems rather convoluted. At first glance, I'm like, that seems rather convoluted, especially the 7 brains spliced together. But here's the thing. The show can kind of get away with it in that it is sci-fi. We have done the whole the cyborgization of the one guy from season 1, and we didn't question that. So and this is a one-time only deal. It's the one time it worked, and the ones after that haven't worked. So I'm like, fine, this is our Frankenstein. This is our modern day sci-fi Frankenstein story. I'm fine with this. It's calling back to Frankenstein. Again, Mikishima would be sitting there with his legs crossed, eating a Madeleine, dunking it in tea, going, oh, how pedestrian. You're playing off of Frankenstein. First Sherlock Holmes, now Frankenstein. Oh, Like, how basic. Like, I can just see him doing that. But I'm fine with it because it's a callback to literary sources. It's just not good enough for Mikishima's book club. But I'm fine with it. I'm okay with this. Saiga seems to not question it. So, and Saiga's been kind of our moral compass, voice of reason. And he's like, yeah, he said he has 184 bodies and personalities, including 7 brains. And that is who he is. Now, it's important to note here, at first, I thought that this doctor had done the surgery. But no, it was the SYBIL system that did the surgery. It was the Togani Foundation working with the SYBIL system that did the surgery. So that's the thing. This doctor didn't actually do it. He's just telling what Kamui told him. And I'm like, that Saiga's like, well, I'm surprised that's even possible. And he's like, the chance of this surgery was pretty much 0. He's like, I could not do it. If I was asked to do it again, I probably could not do it. But he has lived as an existence that psychopaths cannot be measured at all. And I like that we get, like, I love how we get Saiga's perspective of seeing the way that he sees it. Saiga sees, as the doctor's talking, he's viewing the story through Kamui's perspective, as if Kamui was telling the story back to the doctor. I like that we see how Saiga views the situation and how he takes it into account. That works really well. And then we get the flashback talking about, I like that we have the little nurse drone, like wheeling this like bandaged, full body casted Kamui around. And he goes over and over again and sees the cameras and he's watching the scanners and everything. He told me he realized his uniqueness was when he'd be able to live a normal daily life. And the more engrafted the implants became, the less he was recognized by the scanners. And he was kind of like, he became a ghost and was cut off from society and wasn't detected. I think it's a pretty cool comparison to Mikishima. Because Mikishima, Saiga talked about in the last season, him and Kogami kind of theorized that Mikishima's like asymptomatic presence allowed him to kind of go undetected by the system, and he felt kind of left out, like he wasn't ever a part of it. And so Kamui is kind of like Mikishima, and that kind of makes sense why they both have the similar goals of dismantling the system, because they're isolated, they're lonely, they want more people to connect with, and that's why he's healing people. And then Kamui's like, I tried to get recognized and hope and attract public attention to be judged. I consulted people I thought I could trust, including doctors and counselors, but they turned me away and didn't want me to be, associated with them. So I like this kind of shift here. So we have Mikishima back in season 1. Kogami had this idea that Mikishima was kind of isolated by the system because he was asymptomatic, and he was trying to dismantle it because he was lonely and because he wanted others to kind of be on the same side as him. And Mikishima kind of denied it to an extent and tried to expand upon it. The thing about it is, Mikishima, I don't think, ever wanted to be noticed by the system. Mikishima didn't want to recognize the system at all. Mikishima hated the system, and he hated the disease and stuff that came from it. And he was like, no, I don't like this. I'm going to dismantle it. Kamui, on the other hand, is frustrated because he's this anomaly that is isolated from the system, and no one wants to involve themselves with him because of that isolation and that anomaly. So he is a little bit different than Mikishima. I like that. I like that they're moral compasses. They both want to destroy the SYBIL system, but they're for different reasons, and they have different capacities. Like the SYBIL system wanted Mikishima because of his brain, and Mikishima was like, no. And the SYBIL system has technically had a hand in creating Kamui, who is now like, you've created this monster and I hate my existence. Basically Frankenstein. He's like, I hate my existence and I want to dismantle the humanity that... The funny thing is, the thing that kind of subverts it is Frankenstein like hated his existence and wanted to get revenge upon, humanity that had and was envious of that existence that they had. Whereas Kamui doesn't want to get revenge on humanity. He just wants to kill Dr. Frankenstein. Basically, he wants to just get revenge on his maker and then help others to not feel like they're endangered by the system that has isolated him. So, interesting. And so Saiga continues being like, you can't, someone who, I like that Saiga says, you know, people didn't want to associate with you because to deny SYBIL system meant that you were, you know, tempting fate. Akane's been the only one that can get away with that so far. And Kamui says, well, SYBIL wasn't the only one. My existence was denied by everyone who was dependent upon it. Yeah, if people depend on the system to live this happy, comfy life, then they don't want to acknowledge Kamui. And the people, it's kind of a double-edged sword. The people comfy with SYBIL system don't want to acknowledge Kamui because that means that the system is possibly corrupt and that could destroy their lives. But then the people that possibly are threatened by the SYBIL system don't want to acknowledge Kamui because it will put them in more danger. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation for Kamui's existence. He's like, I have to disappear. I searched for the reason, and soon I came across the season of hell. And Saiga's like, oh, that. And he's like, oh, you know about it. He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I've heard of it. I feel like Saiga's lying. He knows more. So he's like, at one time, the Minister of Economy proposed a support system for citizens to replace the SYBIL system, and it became controversial. Okay, so we have this alternate system, which I'm going to put over here. We have the Ministry of Economy. I find it interesting that we have the Ministry of Economy proposing the Panopticon, which I've heard of the Panopticon before, and how he describes it is basically that theory. We talked about it in a rhetoric class, the idea of the Panopticon. And then you have the Ministry of Welfare, which is hilarious that we have these two ministries that are doing the SYBIL system. Okay, so they talk about the controversial, like, alternative to the SYBIL system, which is hilarious because it's something that does exist, called the Panopticon, that would control the traffic and banks and keep an eye on all of them. So originally this was only supposed to be for traffic and banks, which makes sense. You have Ministry of Economy. Things that control the economy are the banking system and how you traffic that money back and forth. And they're like, and I like that Saiga says Panopticon is the name of a system that allows one to monitor everything from one place. It was an architectural form designed as a detention facility by Jeremy Bentham. Yes, we discussed that in that rhetoric class. That it's this idea of, and I'm going to put like the Eye of Sauron here. Basically like the Eye of Sauron, right? You have that up there. And it monitors everything around it in an environment. Is kind of how it works. But the whole idea is that it's a watchtower in the middle of a detention center, which, you know, and the way that Kamui describes the benefits of it, he goes, well, by monitoring and recording people's actions and economic activities, it would prevent crimes before they happen and guide citizens towards the best way of living. It was a simple proposal, but you could call it ideal. And I like that Saiga goes, oh, ideal. It's a prison. I was like, yeah, everyone, I'm like, here's the thing. It's, you know, you have the SYBIL system, right? Where it's the idea that a number and hue controls, you know, your fate. But the thing about it is, yeah, your number and your hue controls your fate if you're monitored. It's kind of a slippery slope here, and it's a little bit hard to kind of compare the two because the thing about the SYBIL system is they do have these cymatic scans that do scan people all the time. So you are being monitored. You are being watched to an extent. And so, but we have established in this show that there are areas of Japan that are outside of the SYBIL system's control. So theoretically, you do have a sliver more freedom within the SYBIL system than you would the Panopticon, because there are places you can go where you're not being monitored, right? And the funny thing is, with the SYBIL system, if we're talking about the technicalities of it that Saiga doesn't even know about, then you're also talking about the multiple brains or the hive mind that kind of has to work together like a little council to figure out its decision making, whereas the Panopticon sounds like it's one brain, one mind, one omnipotent being watching over everything all the time. And Saiga's like, yeah, to citizens whose every move is monitored, that's the definition of a prison. And that's when Kamui's like, well, how is that different than the current system? And then they're like, let's go back to what we're talking about. I was like, yeah. So it is really hard because the Panopticon, as well as the SYBIL system, are essentially doing the same things. They are monitoring people and making judgments for them rather than them having free will to do whatever they want to. So it is an omnipotent presence trying. It feels like you have the Panopticon and the SYBIL system that are these two like deities trying to fight over omnipotent power. And Kamui is kind of representing Team Panopticon. And with that, that's kind of what he is, right? That's kind of what he's becoming. Kamui is kind of becoming the Panopticon, where he is the, and I'm going to kind of tie this back over here, he is the only one who heals them. And they talk about this like brainwashing, which I'm still holding out hope that Shizui is trying to be clever and trying to get to where she can get to Kamui and maybe attack him, but maybe she has been brainwashed. I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of scary if that's the case. I'm like, girl, he took your eye and you're okay with this? But yeah, it's this idea that Kamui is the Panopticon. He's the one that heals everybody and has become this savior to them. And they all follow him and he monitors everyone else. Is kind of what it seems like it's leaning towards. But it's hilarious because he was kind of created in that sense by the SYBIL system. And the SYBIL system is the opposition to the Panopticon. That's like, oh no, we don't want that. We want our system. It's like Hydrox versus Oreos. Which one is better? You have the original and you have the other one, but which one is better? And I mean, they're both bad. So it's like we need an option C, to be honest. And so Kamui says they started to do developments, but then all of these errors and problems came up, enough to where it had to be shut down and be shelved. And I do agree with Kamui here. I do think it was very much designed by the SYBIL system to fail. It was shelved for a reason, and the SYBIL system, I'm sure, hijacked it and had some point in its corruption. Mm-hmm. I'm sure. I'm near positive that that's exactly what happened, right? Like, yeah. And he's like, and thus SYBIL has continued to rule to this day. And he's like, well, what if things, he's like putting his tinfoil theory hat on it. And I think that he's right. I agree with Kamui. And he's like interfering with the Ministry of Economy, the manipulation and draining of human resources, the scramble for a budget, the dealings amongst politicians. Those things really did happen. So he's like, yeah, sure. It's like, you may think it's a conspiracy theory, but he's like, there was an interference with the economy in our country. We did have human resources drained. There was budget dealings and politicians going crazy. Those things all actually happened. And as a result of all that, the number of plane crashes and traffic accidents, because the system was tampered with and there was downtime before they got the original system back up, they were like, all of those things were dozens of times higher than in a typical year. They don't exactly say it, but I was like, was the plane crash because of the season of hell? Was the plane crash that caused this whole thing for Kamui, was that because of this? Because of the SYBIL system shutting down the Panopticon? If it was, I could understand why Kamui would have such a negative view of the SYBIL system, because he's like, my whole existence and the deaths of all those around me are because of this incident that was just because two companies were rivaling taking control of a population. And this shouldn't have happened to begin with. And he's like, a large number of people were victimized during that event, and they named it the season of hell. And you found your answer there. He's like, yeah, I learned exactly what I needed to do to become this present day medicine man. I like that he's just like, I'm just your average everyday old shaman. I'm just doing the Lord's work. Don't mind me. I like Kamui's just like, I'm just walking from door to door, just doing the Lord's work. It's all fine. Just healing people left and right. So that was 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago that I was reunited with him. So he knew him from the original surgery. He did perform the original surgery under the SYBIL system, but the doctor doesn't want to acknowledge that, right? So the doctor did help him, and 5 years ago, he met up with the doctor about putting plans in motion. Which is kind of crazy that Kamui and Makishima never met, but again, in this world, you know, it's kind of like, this isn't like a superhero show where all the bad guys have a secret villain league formed. Right? They're all acting independently. And Mikishima, I don't know if Mikishima would like Kamui. Probably not. But I could see why they would never cross paths, right? But he's like, I was dependent upon drugs around that time due to excess of stress. And so he was like hooked on this medication. And Kamui's like, well, I'll heal you. And it's the medication that was in the same kinds that were in the facility where Aonagi died. So basically Kamui is like, he's doing his own like home medicine and counseling, which explains why he did the psychiatrist hollow with Ginoza, which I'm amazed we're not going into more detail about in this show and being like, Ginoza, are you not freaked out that Kamui's been talking to you for how long? But I guess that's neither here nor there now. And that's been helping to clear Hughes. Okay. And then him being like, well, you don't need the SYBIL system if you have me. I'm the Panopticon. You don't need the SYBIL system as long as you're with me, baby. And so meanwhile, Togani and Grams are here. Togani and Grams are here working with the SYBIL system. And so we have Kamui who wants to clear Hughes. Togani, conversely, is kind of an admiration of Saiga. He admires Saiga. We'll talk about him in a second. He admires Saiga because he is known to turn Hughes black, like Togani. I don't think Togani is the son of Saiga. If he was, I'd be like, dude, what? But I don't think that's the case. No. Although, that is true. Saiga did influence Ginoza and Kogami. Both became enforcers. Togani's done the same, but we'll talk about Togani. We'll get him. But basically, Kamui came up to him. And, you know, Kamui is... I know what people are going to say in the comments. They're going to be like, oh, now you've been calling Kamui creepy this whole time. Yes, he's creepy. Yeah, he's a freaking Frankenstein. He's terrifying. I don't like the way the one brain, whatever brain of the 7 it is, but the one brain that acts that way around Shisui, it's gross, it's creepy, I don't like it. But I like that, you know, Kamui, you know, he frames himself as this cult leader, essentially, that's healing people with data that they were denied seeing. And he taught people how to meditate and gave them appropriate medication to get them back on track. But I'm like, you know, with the doctor, it seems the doctor wanted that treatment. Shisui didn't necessarily want that treatment, but you forced it on her and brainwashed her. So, weird. And I like that Akane is so intriguing to Kamui and Togani because for Kamui, he's like, oh, you don't need my help. Your psychopath is always clear. Interesting. And for Togani, he's like, I want to... Now the make her black makes sense. He wants to corrupt her psychopath. That's what he's trying to do. And it's not working. It's not having any effect. Interesting. Interesting. And it's not just a simple revenge. He's going to overturn everything. He wants to overturn the system. He's someone who enables us to dream like that. And so Akane's like, Akane's in an interesting position. And grab me another marker. So with Akane's in a very interesting position, right? Come over here. Hopefully you can hear me. So with Akane, she acknowledges the SYBIL system. She knows why it exists. She knows the purpose of it. There's not another system right now that can do what it can do. And if you just quit cold turkey, then everything will collapse. Now, if Kamui had a way to get around the SYBIL system sustainably and humanely, do I think Akane would jump ship? Probably. Because the only thing holding her there is the knowledge that that's the system that's working the best so far. So we've got to keep it in check. But also, she acknowledges this SYBIL system, but she realizes that it's bad. She realizes that it is flawed. but is trying to do damage control the whole time. So Akane's in this very weird middle position where Kamui recognizes that Akane would probably go with him if he could supply some sustainable, reasoning. But also, Togani knows that she's not going to leave because she is imbued with the same sense of justice that the system is upholding. So they kind of have Akane in this weird place, which, starting this season, I'm like, oh, Akane has all this power and all this, she has the system in the palm of her hands. And now I'm like, she really doesn't. And I'm like, oh no, she's kind of being played by them. Meanwhile, I'm like, we have, Kasai. Kasai in this episode, oh my God, she was just... And the fact that she's doing her nails, so it's like, which brain is it? I'm like, oh my God. Well, obviously the grandma's brain is in the system. And Togani knows it. Because he calls her mother. Oh my God. Yeah, doing the nails and being like, oh, so that's what this is about. It's not just me you want to judge, but the entire system, Kirito. So that's why she knows him. She is the grandma. She is the mom or whatever. She is the mother, basically. I say grandma. She's the mom of Togani. She's the mom that basically is Dr. Frankenstein to Kamui's Frankenstein, and he wants to take down the system along with her. And she's so gleeful about it. She's like, sure, go right. She's doing her nails. She's like, sure, go right ahead. Go try. Let's see how that works for you. It's just like she's enjoying, like the SYBIL system is enjoying this fly taking this on, this ant trying to attack the anteater. So anyway, we have all of these different parts. A human created by joining pieces of corpses together. Yeah, the eyes, the ears, everything. And I like that Mika's like, this is really creepy. Yeah, there's a part of me that feels bad for Mika going through all this. And then there's another part of me that we'll talk about in a hot second. Where she's like, wait, this was accessed 2 months ago. Gah. By Shunji Uchikoga that she realizes is one of the hollows. So Kamui came here, but why? Why access the file? Anyway, so I like that we cut back to the inspector's base and Akane's like, where is Mika? And everybody's like, we don't know. She's like, she keeps running off. And Akane's like, well, fine. And they're like, let's go ahead and give our status reports. And Kunozuka's like, I want to get mine out of the way and get it over with. So they talk about the names of the accident victims. They've determined that pretty much everybody that has died in the plane crash is potentially a hollow. And at least 54 of them are already in the city. So that's terrifying. And so they're like, the hollows are what he wears. And they go through all of that. And then Hinakawa says, it might also mean that he only uses the hollows of the victims. Yeah, I think that it's nice to narrow down that Kamui is obsessed with the accident that created him. And so she's like, yeah, he's probably only using the hollows of the people in the accident because those are the ones implanted in him. And so then they talked about the organs left at Kamui's hideout and have determined the people who are possibly swapped. And every single one of them is a big shot from every sector of society. So basically we have all these organs. It's not swapped with the lackeys that are the illegal aliens, but rather the organs swapped with these high-profile people so that they can be healed by the system. It's creepy. Kamui's whole system, yeah, I do agree that Kamui fighting the SYBIL system, noble effort. Good for you for realizing the system's corrupt. It is. But the idea of the way in which he fights the system, it's kind of like Mikishima. You can't dog Mikishima for having the ideas about the system being wrong, because it was. But whereas Mikishima didn't really care who he killed and how he had to do it to dismantle it, which is a problem, Kamui is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where Kamui's not necessarily killing people, but... well, he is. If you look back at the facility with Ayanagi, yeah, there were people dying. But Kamui's methods of healing are implanting organs and brainwashing people, which is a problem. So, and Akane's like, yeah, this system's not any better. So, neat. She's like, he killed them while pretending to treat them. And then I like that Togani's like, wow, he kept a psychopath clear while performing all these terrible acts. And she's like, that's the uniqueness that he has. He's compounding drugs and counseling, and he can give the clear psychopaths to a serious latent criminal to the level that it could be called brainwashing. Yeah. And Ganoza's like, well, medical care is his most powerful weapon, so that's a problem. And at the same time, he's limited his attacks to medical institutions. So yeah, he's basically trying to wipe out the competition to target people that are the most vulnerable who are going to these facilities to get medicine. I mean, that all makes sense, but yeah, and of course, Ganoza's probably standing there going, well, I also got counseling from this guy, so am I halfway brainwashed? What's interesting is Ganoza from season 1, if that was still on the table, I'm really curious if Ganoza in season 1, if Kamui would have approached him about clearing his psychopaths and joining him based on his status and everything. That's so interesting. I think if Masaoka hadn't died, it could have been very different. Because, kind of like a Shisui situation, would Kamui have tried to get Ganoza on his side, knowing that Ganoza wanted to clear his psychopaths? Maybe, but then after Masaoka's death and Ganoza being like, I've accepted I'm going to be an enforcer, then Kamui was like, never mind. That's not going to work. So, I don't know. That's interesting, though. But yeah, Kamui has a very clear target. He's been going after clear facilities. He's targeting a pharmaceutical company, though. In all of his attacks, he's trying to get a mental care facility or a specific pharmaceutical company. I wonder who they're tied to. And they're like, there must have been some advantage. But then they're like, why did he use a port to hide out instead and lure them there? And I think the answer was it was the drones and all of that. So they look for some unsolved missing persons cases to see if there's been anything on record. And some of the people must have gone missing. They're like, if you got the organ transplants, there are people who were killed with their organs removed. So the people who were going to have the organs implanted had to disappear. And people whose disappearance aren't recognized by the society are illegal aliens. So the impersonators are illegal aliens. So that's where we're at. So basically, he's been using home medicine and counseling to clear their hues, which has also brainwashed some of them into believing that he's like a god, like you do. But then he has these illegal aliens come in, take the organs from representatives in society, and using hollows to disguise them, and possibly doing face transplants as well, so they look like them, and they're possibly going to be the ones with the dominators, and that there's 8 at least left. Cool! Neat! And they're going to try to take SYBIL system and the Togani Foundation down. Makes sense. So we've got Kamui's goals, missions, which is hilarious because normally I feel like Akane would be like, interesting that they're trying to take the SYBIL system and stuff down. But Akane knows about the SYBIL system. Meanwhile, Saiga runs into, as soon as I saw them damn white shoes, I was like, Togani, do not hurt Saiga. Leave him alone. I wondered in this moment when Saiga gets confronted by Togani if my theory before was that Togani could possibly been Kogami, but that has been nixed completely. If anybody's gonna kill Togani, I think it's gonna be Kogami. If he shows back up. But I was wondering if Saiga noticed anything weird about him. And he's like, why are you following me? And he's like, you're Joji Saiga, a lecturer who colored his students black. And Saiga's like, oh, I like that he's like, I'm not thrilled to hear that. I like that Saiga's like, I don't really like having this reputation of making people's psychopaths clouded. I mean, I'm not flattered. And I love that it ties to the coffee. The idea that ties to the coffee being black. I'm like, yes, that's such good symbolism. I like it. But the ability to control the psychopaths of others, something like that can't be a simple skill. And Saiga's like, well, yeah, if that could be passed down, then this society wouldn't hold. I like that Saiga's like, look, if you're trying to suggest that my ability to taint people's psychopaths is genetic, you are mistaken, sir. It's just something that I do. I like that they are establishing Saiga having a little bit more of a role in this season, saying, you are the opposite of Kamui. You basically cloud people's psychopaths, whereas Kamui heals them. So I feel like Togani is trying to learn how Saiga does it so that he can be the antithesis to Kamui. Because Saiga seems to have no intention of being the antithesis to Kamui. He's like, I know how that song and dance goes. Those characters die. Those characters that are direct foils to each other. If I learned anything from Akishima and Kogami, I don't want that. But I feel like Togani is trying to do what Saiga does. And he's like, you know, Akane, her psychopath doesn't change. It doesn't ever go anywhere. And he's like, you're dependent on Tsunemori, whose psychopath doesn't change no matter how much you get involved. You can work with her because you know she's not going to be affected. And I like that Saiga's like, oh, what are you suggesting? I wasn't thinking about that. And then Togani's like, oh, gotta go. Excuse me. I feel like Saiga is going to process everything that Togani just told him and be like, wait a minute. This seems like some bullshit. This seems a little bit suspicious. You know, and he's like, oh, I gotta go. And Saiga's like, weird. And he says, understood. He's like, dependent, then what about you? And he just doesn't answer the question. He's like, you're too sharp. Meanwhile, I love that Mika has gotten another bubble tea. She sat back down to do more research. She stripped the layers off. And it's like all the data Kamui accessed is focused on drug-related categories. And among them was manufacturing technologies for Lacus. And then, which was related to the bombing incident. And then there's also an access to record for several drugs that were used at the medical facility, some of which we know the doctor was using too. And the one related to all of these was the patent owner, which was the Togani Foundation. Imagine! And so Mika's like, well, is Kamui trying to get revenge against Togani? But no, it goes further than that. Yeah. Their patented technologies were used in the surgery performed because of the plane crash. A technology for extracting a brain while one is still alive. Oh my God, that's so terrifying! Extracting a brain while they're still alive? Nope. A technology to have them brains joined together sounds an awful like the SYBIL system. And then she's like, why would they own technologies like these? What's in the related categories? And then the extraction thing by the drone is what we see used in the SYBIL system. So it's like, oh my God, the Togani Foundation is the foundation of the SYBIL system. Ah! Nope. Oh my God. Suggestions of surgeries that don't require humans. Yeah, they're drones. The name of the patent applicant is Misako Togani. Yeah, and Misako is basically Kasai. Yeah, Misako. So that's her name. Misako Togani. Happens to also be the mom of our dear boy Togami as well. Togani, oh my God. Nope. And there she be. And then, yep, that was her and the baby. Oh my God, yeah, his mom. Yep. And the chairperson of the foundation that died in 2909, which was 5 years ago, which just happened to be around the time when she died 5 years ago and became part of the SYBIL system that Kamui started putting his plan into motion. Imagine that. What a coinky-dink of times. And then what about the father? Nope, there is no father. He was made in a little test tube. There had to be some dad involved, but I don't know. If they find out that Saiga is the dad of Togani, I will freak. And she's like, what? Is this Petri dish baby? What's going on? But the proof of congenitalness of AA, an idiosyncrasy. Yep, the information is sealed. And she's like, damn it, I can't find any information. And then she's like, meanwhile, she's like, I know what I'll do. I'll just go. And what is she? She said, I got it. And she says, oh yeah, that's right. So what was that's right? Like, how did she find this information out? How? And it's like, okay, so we find out with Akane and Togani, they were going to check on the impersonators one by one, but there's nothing we could have done, and we're always a step behind. So the impersonators have disappeared, and they get an alert from home security that somebody's infiltrated their house, or Akane's apartment, and they find out it's just a guy checking for fire and water hazards. Okay, yep. He's like, I thought you signed the paper saying I could come in. So then we have, interesting, she makes some green tea for herself. We have the color green. It's what's so crazy is that, like, Akane doesn't know about Togani yet. And Togani is, like, doing everything he can to schmooze her. Everything he can to schmooze her. He's like, you were using yourself as bait, hun. She's like, well, I'll listen to your complaints later. And then they're sitting there having tea and stuff. And he's like, well, you left that what color on the side of the wall? And she was like, well, there's no harm. And he's like, in order to put yourself in Kamui's state of mind, you have to preserve the view that he saw. And then he's like, did I guess right? And he has a little coy smirk. And I'm like, shut up, you're a lie. You're a cake that's a lie and you're a trap. You need to get away from her. Be Happy was like, you sound like the one friend that's trying to keep your bestie away from some guy because you want her to date someone else. And I'm like, that is exactly right. Because Togani is a freaking trap. No. And she's like, well, I expect no less from you. And he's like, you're a born detective. And she kind of just laughs at that. And she's like, oh, well, thank you. And he's like, but that means that you lack charm. And she's like, what? And she makes a face and he laughs at it. And I'm like, quit laughing, quit flirting. Get away from her. No, he's a damn trap. And then they just kind of like smile and stuff. And she's like, what about my grandma? So I'm curious with the grandmother. The earrings in the past, when we looked at the camera and stuff, I'm like, is Kamui using the grandmother? Or is the grandma like, I don't want anything to happen to her, but she may already be dead. We don't know. And Togani's kind of like, grandmother? I didn't know she had a grandmother. But how did he not know? Because he heard her talking. Maybe he didn't hear. Maybe back when she visited the grandma in the last episode, he didn't hear who it was that she visited. And now he knows. And basically, the grandma gets a call for a security update because her house was invaded. Meanwhile, so my thing is, how did she get the information? My only thing is that she's like, how do I keep going getting the information? But what allowed Mika to get the info to hack the system and write the report? How did that work? How did she get that information? I feel like there's a scene missing because how did we jump to this conclusion to get all this information? She said it started with a plane crash 15 years ago, and it was a tragic accident with 184 children involved among those that died. And someone gained a great deal by taking advantage of the accident, which was the Togani Foundation. So how did she get access to this information is what I want to know. I feel like there's a scene missing where we connect the dots because she went from not being able to access the information to suddenly writing this report that explains everything. And I'm like, is she just making stuff up to fill in the dots? What? How? And the only one who survived was Kirito Kamui, which we know this. And Masako Togani, the one who was running the foundation at the time, was devoted to research on an idiosyncrasy called AA. As part of her research, there was an experiment used to demonstrate the use of patented technology owned by the foundation, which extracted the brains and joined them together. So she's taking so far, she's like, okay, we know that there was this patent. We know there's this technology. Right now, she's like, okay, I'm just stringing together what I know to form this thesis that they did this experiment, saying she pushed her research forward, had the doctor do the experiment using Kamui and the accident victims' dead bodies. And this is her hypothesis. As a result, the foundation's patented technology evolved even further. Okay. So that she could have came to that conclusion just by the information that she found. Sure. And then Kirito Kamui's goal in this crime is to retaliate against the foundation and the SYBIL system, but she doesn't know about the SYBIL system yet. So there's that, right? We can get closer to the arrest of Kamui by keeping an eye on the foundation. Okay. However, Division 1 is currently burdened with a significant problem. And that is Akane Tsunemori and Sakuya Togani. So up until this point, I was like, okay, girl, you're putting together the information that you've got so far and researched. You've drawn this conclusion. You've got this narrative. It makes sense. It checks out. But then she involves Akane and Togani, right? And she's like, so Togani, she made up this idea and I guess it's correct. I guess she did a good job guessing that Togani was created from an experiment by Misako, who was artificially trying to create AA. Okay, so I'm guessing that Togani was a test tube baby. We don't know who the dad is, but she was trying to create an asymptomatic child, we think. And Togani was Togani was a test tube baby, which, is not unheard of technology. And they do like gene manipulation with babies now, kind of. So yeah, I see this. And so they were trying to make him asymptomatic. Correct? Possibly. They were trying to artificially create whatever this AA was. And it can be speculated that this caused him to hold the worst crime coefficient. Okay. Yeah, they show him like growing up, that mullet just gets bigger and bigger. In other words, Kamui, the ringleader of this crime, you see this, and Sakuya Togani are connected by the keyword AA. Whatever that means. Kirito and Kamui are equally dangerous. He's a deviant, and Togani is a deviant who takes pleasure in raising other crime coefficients. In fact, examples show that all 5 inspectors he worked with in the past became latent criminals. So yeah, Togani and Kamui are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? One's raising and one's clearing their hues. But then she's like, it is anticipated. Like, all these are assumptions. I'm like, Mika, it is anticipated that Tsunemori's crime coefficient will also increase with Togani's influence in the near future. But Tsunemori does not seem to care about it. I'm like, girl, true. Tsunemori does not care about it. She's pretty sure that her crime coefficient is not going to go up. She's pretty confident based on the experiments she's been doing, it ain't going to change. And part of me is like, I think Mika is a little jealous that Akane's crime coefficient hasn't changed. But I'm also like, girl, she's like your coworker and you are writing this scathing report. Akane has done nothing to you. I'm like, girl, why? Why, bitch, why? And shows no intention of accepting the advice of others. This is a serious, it's like because Akane didn't listen to you, who are brand new on the force and has not gone through nearly the amount of shit that Akane has, you're just mad about it, and you've made up this whole convoluted thing, which is mostly true, as it turns out, and are trying to throw her under the bus. Girl! Like, part of me doesn't feel bad that Mika's getting involved in this, but we'll talk about it here in a second. She's like, many inspectors have already become vicious because of the bad decisions made by Inspector Tsunemori. But I was like, yeah, these guys technically did die because they followed her to the port, but you found Kamui. Like, what? We can not only arrest... What does she say there? We can not only arrest Kamui. Like, she's typing so fast at this point. And we can not only can we not arrest, as it stands, not only can we not arrest Kamui or remove Sakuya Togani, but we could face an existential risk. I strongly call for the dismissal of Inspector Tsunemori, oh my god, or the suspension of her rights as an inspector. My girl. Oh my god. I'm like, Mika. And she's like, oh, I'm sure she'll understand. She's sitting there eating her chicken. Oh my god, and just sending it on. Oh. Mika's like ultimate betrayal here is just absolutely shocking. Meanwhile, Saiga gets in the elevator with Akane and is like, how's it going? And she's like, we've checked all the impersonators' houses and their second houses, but there's no trace of them. They've all disappeared because they're with Kamui right now. And he's like, they didn't just run. They're clearly hanging out somewhere planning their next move. They're taking action. Yes, that's what they establish here. And she's like, we have to do whatever it takes to stop them. And I like that Saiga's like, well, it sounds like you know what they're about to do. Sounds like you know what their goal is. And Akane's like, oh, if we're to trust Masazaki, then Kamui's goal is revolution. And somebody's watching on the cameras, right? They're watching them in the elevator. In order to overturn the society, he judges the existence that embodies it. There's only one such existence. And she's like, the SYBIL system. Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing. Yep, Kamui is trying to overthrow the SYBIL system. Meanwhile, again, they get the report, and she's like, oh, how interesting. To see that you reach this information in such a short time is amazing. Here's what I hate. This I've been holding back on. They're going to keep this bitch alive. And they couldn't keep Kagari alive? Are you joking? Are you kidding me? What? Because Kagari was a better man. He wasn't going to be a lackey. He wasn't going to follow what they said. He was a better man. But they're like, you are an amazing investigator. And she's like, oh, by the way, this AA is what we call open door data. It's a trap. It's luring you in because you looked too far at stuff you weren't supposed to see. Yeah. It's a trap to lure in and understand those who are unfit for society and tries to expose our top secrets, and you fell for it. You fell for the phishing ad, girl. You got scammed. Yep. And she's like, wait, what? And I like at the point Mika's like, excuse me? And she's like, A stands for a priori acquit. It's about having a criminally asymptomatic constitution by nature, which is what they wanted Togani to have, apparently. Which is SYBIL's biggest secret, that people can be asymptomatic. And of course, Mika's like, what the hell are we talking about? She's like, now how should I deal with the girl who deviated from the investigation and devoted herself to collecting data like this instead? She's like, you dug where you weren't supposed to go. What should I do with you? The way that Kasai acts in this scene is terrifying. Because she's like, what should we do with you now? It's like, it's totally opposite from when Kagari was killed by the robot version of Kasai that was just like, burp, burp, beep, beep, boom, boom, bye. Instead, this one's much more devious. It's a different brain, I'm sure. And that's when she backs up into the gun. And, it's like Norman Bateman from Psycho. He's like, oh, mother dearest, what are we doing? To see this produce such a small change in your psychopaths. Uh-huh. We can still make use of her. Uh-huh. Can you leave her to me, mother? So he's like, so her psychopaths didn't end up changing, or did it? And then she's like, mother. And yeah, Misako Togani. And then she looks at her and she's like, yeah, you can do as you please. I can deal with her anytime. Yeah, she wasn't lying when she's like, she's going to be eaten alive. Yeah, so at this point, we know that Misako's brain is part of SYBIL's system, part of the hive mind, which is why Kami wants to take it down. And Togani is fully involved in this, right? Uh-huh. The question is, though, with Togani's age, they said that it was like 18 years ago that he had the enforcers. So how old is Togani? What's been happening? But if we're talking about body manipulation, there's no telling how old Togani is. There really isn't. After all, the problem is, and he's like, oh, if you're thinking of Tsunemori and Kamui, there's no need to worry. Uh-huh. He's like, I'll bring them both down. So Togani's like planning. Togani is an established villain to take down both Kamui and Akane. So now the question is, like, is Akane... I don't see her joining forces with Kamui because I think Kamui's way of doing things Akane hates. So I'm thinking she'd be like, no, I don't want to join you. But the crazy thing is the SYBIL system's like, you know, Akane's been fun, but if you want to take her down, you can. Because she's like smiling about it. He's like, it's my role to make you and SYBIL beautiful and pure, mother. Oh my God, he's so terrifying! No! And of course, the funny thing is the SYBIL system... The funny thing is, at the beginning of this, the end of season 1, the beginning of this season, I was like, oh, Akane has the SYBIL system in the palm of her hand. She can do whatever she wants. The SYBIL system's not going to get rid of her because they want to experiment with her. No, the SYBIL system's like, yeah, we had a good run with Akane. She was a lot of fun, but I just don't know if it's going to work out with her. So Togani, if you want to get rid of her, just go right ahead. I guess we'll just find somebody else. It's fine. No! Oh my God. And of course, Mika's like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, what are you talking about? And then of course she's like, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to see anything. And the fact that Togani like grabs her by her hair and drags her to the desk is freaking. She's like, I don't know anything. Yep. She's like, I won't tell anybody and I'll forget about everything. And Kasai's like, well, that would be smart of you to do. She's like, you really are an ideal citizen. And she's like, so ideal that you're boring. And at that point, I felt like Kasai wanted to get rid of her because she's like, you're boring. You're not going to do anything for us. And then Togani says, she could become a good model case for the time when we eventually reveal the system to the public. And that's why Kasai is like, oh, yeah, while we're experimenting, let's try that. Let's do that. And she's like, well, then. And she, changes brains with another one. And, she's like, I'm going to tell you the secret of this world. And then, of course, Mika's like, what the fudge? Yeah. Oh, my God. What I'm terrified about is that Mika is a coward. We know Mika is a coward. She's a coward, and she, basically, she's, fuck, damn it. She's a coward, and she would do anything for self-preservation. And my fear is that in doing anything for self-preservation, she's going to be kind of like Ganoza was willing to turn the other cheek, to rise up the ladder. But if he had gotten to this point of learning about the SYBIL system, I don't think that he would have gone along with it. We know Kagari doesn't go along with it. But my fear is that Mika, because she's a coward and she's willing to do anything to stay alive at this point, not raise her crime coefficient or be judged by the system, I feel like that she would sacrifice anybody. I feel like she, I'd like to think she wouldn't kill Kunazuka because she idolizes her, but she would definitely kill Hinakawa. I think that Mika would throw everyone under the bus to save herself. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen, because Togani don't care. Togani is trying to get Akane and Kamui out of here. He's just torturing Akane and gathering as much information about her as he can, trying to change her hue black to see if it's possible and experimenting on her psychologically, that I don't think he cares about her at the end of the day. And I'm like, oh my God. So, oh my God. I'm like, shit. So that's that. That's that. I'm terrified. I am terrified now because I think Mika's going to go along with this because she's too scared shitless to do anything else. Oh my God. I don't know. We technically have 3 episodes left, but we only have 2 weeks left of this season. Oh my God. Oh my God. Because I'm going to watch episodes 10 and 11 together. Stunned. I would say speechless, but I've talked over an hour about this episode, so yeah. I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. But I don't necessarily, I'm not rooting for Kamui. He's still creepy as F, but it's basically like Frankenstein's. It's kind of like Togani and Kamui are like brothers in a sense, where Togani is like the blood son, biological son of Misako. And then Kamui is like the created brother, the Frankenstein foster brother. And it's just like, what the fudge? Oh my God. I'm living for it, but I don't know where we're going from here, but I'm terrified for everybody. I really am. Ugh. In any case, I hope to hear your comments down below. Hope y'all are excited. But yeah, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week to freak out with episode 9 of Psycho-Pass. Bye.